I want to spend a little bit of time helping clarify what I mean by sexual climate. And for the educators, right, you all have heard the term school climate. So I borrowed very heavily from the concepts of school climate and applied it to the issues that I want us to focus on today. In the educational administration literature, they differentiate between school culture and school climate. And, you know, you could argue the semantics if you want, but we're just going to go with this particular set of definitions. The culture of an organization refers to what is written down formally as rules, regulations, and responsibilities, right? So if you're a school district, you probably got tons of bylaws and regulations. If you work for the state, you've got practice manuals that dictate everything from response times to, you know, entering the data in your records. If you're a nonprofit organization, you've got bylaws and articles of incorporation, right? So the culture of an organization refers to that which is written that describes how that organization is supposed to operate. That's the culture. The climate refers to how it really feels to be in that institution. And that can be, when I talk about school climate, that can be a really difficult concept to grasp for so many of us, primarily because most of us, unless we work in a school, we haven't spent time in more than a handful of schools. The one we went to, maybe the ones our kids went to. But people that work in schools, or someone who may be for, like, you know, child study team people that work in multiple schools, right? You really, really can get the sense that two schools can be in the same district, operating under the same exact policies, but the way it feels to be in that school, and I see somebody nodding their head, all right, the way it feels to be in that school is completely different. There are two other clinical terms used in the clinical world for people that are attracted to older kids. The hebophile, someone with a preference for kids just entering puberty, and the ephebophile, somebody with an attraction to adolescents. Now, you can forget those big silly sounding words that come from the American Psychological Association. What you need to not forget is that just because a kid hits puberty, they're exempt from the dangers of predators. I used to joke with my son that, you know, he was never going to, I mean, poor kid was raised by a mom who works in this field, that he was never going to spend a night at an event like, you know, the school's camp out or whatever, unless one of his parents went along as a chaperone until he grew pubic hair. And then he was no longer of the age of attraction to pedophiles. I mean, so that was sort of like a joke in our family. But that clearly, well, it just was. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, my first boss had teenage sons, and I thought because that was his rule. His boys never spent a night away from home unless one of the parents were a chaperone. And sure enough, 15 years later, when I became a mom, having then worked in the field long enough, we had the same rule. Either his dad or I went along. But that didn't protect us totally, because one day I got a call that every parent would dread when he was 4 in a private nursery school in Somerset County that's no longer in existence, that one of the teachers in his school had been arrested for sexually molesting other kids. It doesn't matter who you are or how much you think you know, there are people that prey on kids. And the purpose of this is to remind us that just because a child has entered puberty and has developed beyond the age or physical stature of attraction to pedophiles does not mean that they are out of danger, because there are plenty of Andy Bealers out there. There are plenty of people that are sexually attracted to adolescents, which I think was the question you were going for. What about the guy that kind of wants to hang out with the teens and not really with the adults? Clearly, we've never given that stuff a name. We sort of are way more tolerant about that, and the only reason I can come up with is because we have a visceral reaction to the thought of someone having sex with a 5 or a 6-year-old. We don't have such a visceral reaction to someone having sex with someone who's developed secondary sex characteristics. They've got breasts, they've got pubic hair, but they don't have the developmental capability to consent to being in that situation. And you're going to hear all about consent after lunch today. But kids are not out of danger just because they've hit puberty. They're clearly still potential targets for people whose primary sexual attraction is to older kids. The next one, and this, think of our boy Andy Beeler there, or Mary Gay Letourneau, or any of these lovely paragons of educational virtue. Okay, what is the school's policy and track record regarding teacher-student contact? I'm really old school about that. I would like it to be as little as possible. Are students allowed to address faculty and staff by the first names? I think maintaining that Dr., Mr., Professor maintains a social boundary that helps set and maintain other boundaries. People can debate me. I'm separating fact and opinion here. I'm clearly labeling this as my opinion. In private schools or prep schools, people may not agree, but I think by making it very clear that, I'm not Janet, I'm Dr. Rosenzweig or Professor Rosenzweig, right? With the 15-year-olds, makes it real clear that I'm going to be nice and we can do whatever, but I'm not your buddy, right? I don't want my kid calling me by my first name, right? I'm mom. I'll be mom till the day I'm not here anymore. Because by using first names, it obliterates the relationship that the interaction should be based on, right? If you're a policeman, you're officer or detective. If you're a teacher, you're Mr. or Ms. The names, I think, is a first line status point around boundary maintenances. This is critical. Are there clear rules for both actual and virtual out-of-school contact between students and staff? Very clear rules, and somebody monitors it, and somebody takes a sanction if somebody breaks it. Does the principal or somebody periodically look at teachers' Facebook pages and sees how they're interacting with kids? Right? I would hope that they would be. Maybe we would find the Andy Beelers of the world friending all the pretty girls, and if there's a teacher that's only friending girls and not the boys, look at that. Okay? I would personally rather teachers did not friend their students on Facebook. That's my opinion. That's the teachers? All right. So speak up, guys. Change the climate in your school and, make that the norm. The beauty of norms, and any of you that took your introduction to social course, norms are set by the majority. Right? So instead of the norm being that Andy Beeler can sleep with the girls, or the dozen of you that knew someone having sex with a kid in school, instead of the norm being that we sweep that under the rug, you guys form the healthy majority and change the norm. Right? You're my friend, just not on Facebook. Start a campaign and wear the button around the class. Okay?